Your alarm went off this morning. You probably did not want to get up, but you did, because somewhere, something was waiting for you. A shift, a meeting, a deadline. You have places to be at specific times, 5 days a week, for most of your life, and it feels so normal that you almost never question it. But here is something strange. Every single person who has ever lived before the last 200 years had no idea what a 9-to-5 was. Not one. The 5-day workweek was invented in 1926 by a man named Henry Ford. He did it to sell more products, not to help his workers. Before that, there was no standard workday. No standard week, no alarm, no clock telling your body when to start and when to stop. So what did they do instead? That is what you are about to find out. And when you do, something about your own daily life is going to feel very different. In 1966, a researcher named Richard Lee traveled to the Kalahari Desert in southern Africa. He went to live with a group of people called the Kungsan. They had no farms, no offices, no grocery stores. They had lived the same way for tens of thousands of years. Lee wanted to know one thing: how hard did they actually work to stay alive? He counted every hour they spent finding and preparing food. He watched. He measured. He stayed for over a year. What he found stopped him completely. The Kungsan worked about 15 hours a week, not a day, a week. 15 hours to find everything they needed to eat, to drink, to survive. The rest of the time, they rested. They talked. They sat together. They slept when they were tired. They ate when they were hungry. Not at noon, not at 6, when they were hungry. There was no word in their language for being late, because there was nowhere you had to be at a fixed time. But here is what is fascinating. This was not laziness. This was the normal human life for almost all of history. For about 95% of the time that humans have existed on this planet, nobody owned a clock. Nobody punched in. Nobody counted hours. Your body did not evolve to wake up at 7 and sit still until 5. It evolved to move when there was something to do, and rest when there was not. A researcher named Marshall Salins studied groups like Kungsan in the 1960s. He called them the original wealthy people, not because they had things, because they had time. They had more free hours in a day than almost anyone in the modern world. And they were not bored. They were not anxious about what they should be doing. They were just present. Now, you might be thinking, but they were just surviving, hunting animals, digging for roots. That does not sound like a good life. But that picture is not quite right. In 1974, a researcher named Carol Ember published a study looking at hunter-gatherer groups around the world. She found that most of them did not spend all day hunting. They spent a few hours. Then they stopped, because they had enough. They did not store food the way you do. They did not worry about next month. They shared what they had with everyone around them. If you had meat today, you gave it away. Because tomorrow, someone else would give meat to you. There was no saving. No hoarding, no personal stockpile, just a group of people keeping each other alive, one day at a time. The pressure you feel on Sunday night before the week starts. They never felt that. But that is not the whole story. Around 10,000 years ago, something shifted, not everywhere at once, slowly. In different places, at different times, people started doing something new. They started planting seeds. In a place called the Fertile Crescent, in what is now Iraq and Syria, people began growing their own food for the first time. They did not have to follow animals anymore. They could stay in one place. And that sounds like progress. It sounds easier, but it was not. A researcher named Richard Wrangham spent decades studying what farming did to the human body. The bones tell the story. When scientists look at skeletons from before farming, the bones are thick and strong. The teeth are healthy. The body is well fed. Then farming arrives. And the bones get thinner. The teeth start to rot. The bodies get smaller. Because farmers did not eat many different things. They ate one thing: wheat, corn, rice, whatever they grew. And when the harvest failed, everyone starved together. The hunter-gatherers had hundreds of different plants and animals to eat. Farmers had one crop, and they worked far more than 15 hours a week to grow it. Here is where it gets strange. Farming did not just change what people ate. It changed how people thought about time. When you plant a seed, you have to wait. You have to plan. You have to think about a season that has not arrived yet. For the first time in human history, people were working today for a reward they would not see for months. That is a completely new way of living. Your ancient ancestors lived in the present. Completely. If there was food, they ate. If there was no food, they moved. But farmers could not move. They had land. They had crops that needed them. They were, for the first time, stuck. And being stuck meant something else was now possible. Someone could own the land. Someone could own the harvest. Someone could make other people work on their land and keep the food for themselves. In 3000 BC, in ancient Egypt, workers who built the pyramids were given rations of bread and beer. Not money, not freedom, a measured amount of food for a measured amount of work. That was the deal. That was the beginning of the trade that you still make every morning when your alarm goes off. But even then, it was not a 9 to 5. Medieval farmers in Europe in the 1200s worked very hard during planting and harvest. But between seasons, they worked very little. A historian named Juliet Shore studied work patterns in medieval Europe and found something surprising. Common people in England in the 1400s had somewhere between 8 and 16 weeks of rest every year. Religious holidays, saints' days, seasonal breaks. The church made sure people stopped working regularly. Not because the church cared about rest, because rest was built into the rhythm of the year. Summer, winter, planting, harvest. The seasons told you what to do. Not a manager, not a schedule. The sky. You worked when the ground needed you. You stopped when it did not. And then, about 250 years ago, something happened that changed everything. A machine was invented that did not care about seasons. It ran in winter. It ran at night. It never got tired. And the people who owned it needed workers there all the time. Not sometimes. All the time. The first textile mills in England in the late 1700s ran for 14 hours a day. Workers, including children, stood at machines for those 14 hours. 6 days a week. Sometimes 7. There were no breaks written into any law. No limit. No protection. You worked until you were told to stop. And if you were late, if you were slow, if you left without permission, you lost your job. And losing your job meant something different now than it ever had before. You could not go find food in a forest. You did not have land. You did not have a group of people who would share with you. You had nothing except the machine. And the machine was always running. So you came back. Every day. At the same time. For the same hours. Not because your body told you to. Because the machine was running and someone else owned it and you needed to eat. That is the moment the 9 to 5 was born. Not from nature. Not from human need. From a machine that never slept. So Henry Ford walks in, 1926. He looks at his workers and he makes a decision. 8 hours of work, 8 hours of rest, 8 hours of personal time, 5 days a week, and people called it a gift, a revolution for the working person. But Ford was not being generous. He had done the math. He found that workers who worked fewer hours made fewer mistakes. They built more cars per hour, not fewer, and a worker with 2 days off had time to spend money, to buy things, to buy cars. Ford needed buyers just as much as he needed builders. So the 40-hour week was not born from kindness. It was born from profit. And then the Second World War ended, and millions of people came home and went to offices. And the office had the same logic as the factory. You show up at a fixed time. You stay for a fixed number of hours. You leave when you are told, not when the work is done, when the clock says so. By 1960, sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day was simply what adults did. It was not questioned. It was just life. But here is what nobody told you. Your body never agreed to this. In 2015, a researcher named Jerome Siegel published a study in the journal Current Biology. He traveled to 3 groups of people who still lived without electricity. One group in Tanzania, one in Namibia, one in Bolivia. He measured their sleep, their rest, their daily movement. None of them slept 8 straight hours. None of them woke up at the same time every day. They woke up naturally with the light. They rested in the middle of the day when the heat was strongest. They went to sleep about 3 hours after dark, and they slept deeply. No alarms, no sleep problems, no lying awake at 2 in the morning thinking about tomorrow. Their bodies knew exactly what to do, because nobody had told their bodies to do something different. You have felt this. You know exactly what it feels like to wake up before your alarm and feel actually rested, and you know what it feels like to be dragged out of sleep by a sound at 6:45 when your body was not finished. That second feeling is not weakness. It is not laziness. It is your body doing what bodies have always done, waking up when they are ready. And the fact that this is now a problem, something to fix, something to push through with coffee, is very new. For almost all of human history, waking up tired meant you needed more sleep, so you slept more. The end. There is a word for the kind of rest your ancestors took in the middle of the day. In many warm countries, people still do it. A short sleep after the midday meal. In 2007, a researcher named Dimitrios Trixopoulos published a study following over 20,000 people in Greece. The people who took regular midday rest were 37% less likely to die from heart problems. Not slightly less likely. 37%. Your body was built for a rest in the middle of the day. It was built to move in short bursts and then stop. It was built to eat when hungry and sleep when tired. And instead, it sits in a chair for 8 hours under artificial light, eating at scheduled times, pushing through tiredness with caffeine, and then wondering why it cannot fall asleep at night. None of this means the modern world is wrong. It means something quieter than that. It means the life you are living right now is a very recent invention. The exhaustion you feel on a Wednesday afternoon is not a personal failure. It is a mismatch. Your body is ancient. Your schedule is 200 years old, and those two things have never fully agreed with each other. The Kung San man sitting in the shade of a tree in the Kalahari in 1966, having already done his work for the day, full, rested, surrounded by people he knew his whole life. He was not behind. He was not being lazy. He was doing exactly what a human body was built to do. And somewhere very deep inside you, under the calendar and the deadlines and the alarm set for tomorrow morning, you already know what that feels like. You have felt it on a slow Sunday with nowhere to be. Or on a long holiday when time stopped meaning anything. Or on a morning when you woke up before the alarm, in the quiet, and just lay there. That feeling is not an escape from your life. It is the oldest version of it.